Okay, folks, how's the sound now? I'm just waiting for some comments. Sounds like we have sound here. Yay, yay, yay. Okay, so I'm going to start again. I'm sure I said the best part right then when nobody could hear. So, let's see. My name is Kira. I'm here this afternoon talking about 6 tips for finding and evaluating iPad apps. I'm an SLP. I work part of my time in the public schools and part of my time as a resource facilitator with the Hello Foundation. My time as a resource facilitator is spent fielding great questions from some of the smartest SLPs and OTs I know, over 40 of them affiliated with the Hello Foundation. And they are just constantly pushing me and asking me and having great conversations on all kinds of topics. But recently, more and more of them have been on technology, and specifically the iPad. We've had an iPad in my house since day one, probably more the influence of my husband, since I'm probably not one to actually stand in line for new technology. But as soon as it was in our house, I found myself interested and even passionate about this technology and how we can use it professionally as SLPs. And what I found most enjoyable and really most fun was thinking about the decisions we make with it and how to use it effectively, ethically, and how to know when we're doing it right. And so this fall, when we sat down to create a professional development event for the Hello Foundation, we knew we wanted to talk about the iPad. And we made a decision. We decided instead of kind of creating a short list of recommended apps and talking about specific apps that we liked at that moment, we decided that that it would be a better event and maybe even more fun to talk about the decisions we make clinically and talk about where and how to find apps, and then how to know if what you found is any good, and if the way you're using them is the best you can do. So this presentation is loosely based on that event that happened in the fall. It was great. We all had a lot of fun. And I've taken that information and kind of revamped it into these 6 tips for finding and evaluating iPad apps. So the way this will work, if you go ahead and go to the next slide, right? They do that. They go to the next slide. So you go to the next slide. It's tip number 1. It's basically 1 tip per slide and some resources at the end. At the bottom of the slides, you'll see a little URL. It says presentation notes. And it's just the URL for our blog, thehellofoundation.com/blog. And I thought that this would be a good way to get you some of the resources that I'm going to reference today. So you could either kind of keep us in this window and open that blog in another window so you could look at it as we go through, or you could just know that it exists and access that later and spend your own time looking at that. So tip number 1 is figure out what you need. Seems pretty obvious. But since we all have limited time and limited resources, it makes sense to go out with a specific goal. There are a couple ways that we can think about this sort of a needs assessment. Kind of a more traditional clinical approach would be something like the SET framework set out by Joy Zabala, and I did put that link there on the blog post, so you could look at that if you'd like. This is a framework that's designed, really is probably designed for a team to to look at assistive technology needs for an individual student. And that would certainly work in this context if you're looking for an app, especially if you're looking for an app for an individual student. It's an acronym set. You're looking at the student, at the environment, and at the tasks that the student has in that environment. And then the second T is that you are considering different tools that meet the needs of that student in that environment. So we can take that and apply that to deciding what kind of app we're looking for. We could also, though, take a different approach and look at it in terms of a small group. So, you know, when I'm looking for an app, I might not be looking for an individual student. Maybe I'm considering one small group. Do you read this? One small group, and I want to find something that addresses a particular area of interest that they have. Or maybe I need something that, material that addresses a bunch of different goals simultaneously that I can use with this small group. Or, you know, maybe I need some help with behavior management, or I just need a motivator for a particular kid that's hard to motivate. So all of those are going to kind of go into my list of what I'm looking for. One other way you could approach this is a more personal way. A lot of times I'm looking for an app that meets my needs. So, you know, I need to organize my broiling, bubbling task list and make sure I'm not dropping things. Maybe I need to give direction to a parent who wants to work at home, and I want to give appropriate work for that parent to work at home on their iPad. I need that, but maybe I am just looking for a way to kind of develop my own interests and follow my favorite blogs. You know, all of those are going to be reasons that I might be looking for a particular app that meets my needs. Let's see, what are the other things I listed here? Oh, maybe I'm looking for a way to communicate with teachers on Common Core standards. Maybe I want a client to be able to practice independently at home. Those are all would be specifics that I'd be looking for in an app. And the last note I put here at the bottom was that the iPad should not replace real-world experience, nor should it replace the therapist. Those are kind of things that I keep running through my mind when I'm thinking about, well, why do I need this app? Well, you know, in therapy, I'm going to use an app or an iPad like I do any other tool. It's not going to be, it's not going to run the session for me, right? I'm still going to be scaffolding the tasks and structuring, you know, things specific to the clients I'm working with. And I think especially in talking to parents and when we're thinking about generalization and practice, we can't sell short real-world experience because that's our end goal out there. So the iPad can help us get there, technology can help us get there, but eventually we want to be using this in the real world, in real context. Okay, tip 2. Let's see. Tip 2 is search wisely. So there are a lot of times that Google serves us very well. I think that in searching for apps, there are ways that we can do better. I put the iTunes App Store as number 1. That's kind of the first place that people go when they get an iPad and they're looking for apps. And I think everyone should spend time there. But likely anyone who has would agree that it can be a serious time suck. And at the end of whatever bulk of time that you've spent there, you will likely have found something, but it may or may not be something that meets your needs or the thing that you were actually looking for. And so I did note here, though, there are categories that can help you kind of narrow your search within the App Store. Within the last year, maybe, they've created the category of special education within the larger category of education. So that does help narrow things quite a bit, but there are still other options. So I've listed 3 options that we can consider here. The first is a scroll-through website or kind of a blog of app reviews. On the post on the blog. I think the example I gave of this kind of website was Therapy App 411. And this is just a basic app review site. I mean, it's specific to therapy, a little bit more broad than just speech and language therapy, but so it is specific to our field. But beyond that, it just reviews apps a couple times a month, and you can do a search on their site and kind of see if it has anything that might meet your needs that we determine in tip 1. Alternatively, you could look at a video tutorial site, right? So it gives you a little bit more than a narrative review. The one that I've listed here and on the blog post as an example is, it looks cryptic, but it's actually an acronym, A4CWSN, so that's Apps for Children with Special Needs.com. And there's a whole lot on that site, but one of the tabs at the top is for app videos, and they do a very nice job of going through. They have a lot of videos that are of apps that have been reviewed, and you can go through and watch their videos, see the app in action. You know, it's basic review. They tell if they liked it and why. And then one of the other things, though, that's very nice about this site is they do have on that same tab where you can click down and request a video review of an app if they haven't reviewed it. So that can be especially valuable if you're looking at some of the more expensive apps and you have some time to kind of wait and weigh your choices. The last suggestion here is a searchable site, and the example I gave was bridgingapps.org. Let's see. Bridging Apps is it's a big site. It offers a lot of different services, but one of the things that I find really valuable at this site are their reviews of apps. You can search for apps by setting different parameters. So on this particular site, you can set, you know, language skills within this range, cognitive development within this developmental range. It gives you kind of age brackets. You can choose specific skills that you want the app to target. There's a whole bunch of different options. And then based on all of those parameters, you can do a search within their database, and that brings up a whole bunch of different apps that meet your search criteria. But really the best part, though, is that then when you click on those apps, many of them have been reviewed by members of this site. You do have to have a free account to search in this site. But the apps have been reviewed by members of this site and reviewed by some really thoughtful special educators that are really taking kind of a special needs view at these apps. And so that can help you kind of wisen your search. If we look at tip number 3, we're going to the next slide now. Tip number 2 was to search wisely. Tip number 3 is to search deeply. So we can do those kinds of broad net searches. But we can also, once you kind of start to narrow in on something, you can do a deeper search. Think a little bit beyond the blog reviews. And 2 recommendations I have are to search YouTube. Look for maybe some YouTube videos of kids using that app, or therapists using that app, or other people's reviews that aren't blog reviews, but that they've chosen to post on YouTube. And the other recommendation is to search for developer documentation and FAQs. So a lot of times these developers have developed numerous apps for special needs users, and you can read their documentation and get a little bit of the history or the reasons why they've done things, and uncover some of the details about these apps that may or may not be in a quick narrative review on a blog. Tip number 4. Tip number 4 is learn before you judge. So any of us, I'm sure, who have used an iPad in therapy have found ourselves in the position where you've got your client next to you, and either go ahead. Either you are just a little overexcited about using something that you that you haven't thoroughly learned, or maybe you thought you had learned it, and as it turns out, you got into it and discovered you don't actually understand all of the details of the app, and that can really color your experience with an app. Something that might really meet your needs and be a great experience could just be really could require some familiarity before you use it with clients. And so kind of the common sense recommendations around this then are try explaining it to somebody else. Talk with a colleague or explain to a family member about what you want your client to be able to do with this. Try it out, see what questions they have. And then, do you have a guinea pig? Or do you have children? Try it with them. See if it really runs as smoothly as you thought it would. For some of these, you have to input information in advance. Maybe it's going to work better if you've already got some information into this app so that you have something to work with, or you have an example that you've created in the app. So these are all things to think about before you use and judge your app. If we move to number 5. My tip is do judge it. I think that it can be easy to just start collecting apps, to think, about our needs. What do I want in my dream app? What needs do I have to be met? Get out there, collect all this stuff, but never kind of circle around and look at, okay, so I needed something for A, B, and C. I tried this. Did I find it? Really, before you can be, before you can decide whether you have to keep looking, you have to decide, did this meet the needs that I set out or not? We're looking for continuous improvement. If it did meet your needs, chances are in a couple months or a year, there's going to be a whole new crop of apps that may just meet even more needs you didn't even know you had. And the second part of this judge piece is the use of rating scales. If you look at the blog post where I had the resources posted, there are a couple of different places that I gave you to look at rating scales that people have developed to look at apps. I think that formally these rating scales are probably used most often by, they were developed by reviewers or bloggers that are doing these formal app reviews in an effort to give kind of a more objective score or something that can help you compare apps. Or I think some of them were developed by employers or school districts who are trying to decide, should we pay for this app? Like, tell us about this app. How good is it? But I think that looking at the questions on those rating scales can be sort of a guide to your own evaluation of these apps. I have way too many screens here to be able to go and look at the websites, but I did print some of them out, and there are a couple that, well, maybe I'll come back to them if we have time. But I think they're worth looking at and reading through and looking at what other people have decided is important in apps, and maybe you agree with those things, that's what makes an app good, or maybe you have other things that you can add to your own kind of rating scale. And tip number 6 is share the wealth. If you found something that really meets your needs and that you're doing great things with, tell people about it. Probably the single best thing that you can do for an app and for the developer of that app is to write a favorable review in iTunes. That will help, when other people then are searching in iTunes, having favorable reviews in iTunes helps those apps come up higher on other people's searches. So that's definitely worthwhile. It's easy. You can do it anonymously. You can make it as long or complex as you want. Another idea, though, is to go back to your favorite blog or the app review source that maybe you got the idea, and put some comments on their blog. Thanks for reviewing this. Here's what I'm using it for. Kind of related to that, though, would be to let the developers know what you're using it for. I think this is especially neat for apps that were designed maybe not with a special needs population in mind, but we've been able to do some neat things with them. I mean, I'm thinking about things that are being used for video modeling and some of the writing apps. These, I think SLPs and special educators are using these apps in, novel ways, and I think that developers, if they know about this, can make them even more friendly to this population and add, if they're going to do updates and they know what people are doing with them, they can add the kind of features that you want. And the last idea is maybe it's just a group of your colleagues. Maybe you meet from time to time and share how you're finding apps and what apps are working for you. Beyond this, I've got resources. I think I've talked about most of these in the talk. Oh, on the first resources page, the second one, it's a really long URL that says iPadsForSpecialNeedsBook.com. This is a really cool ebook that is you can buy it in all kinds of different ebook formats, and you can also read it for free online. But it's a great book that's written for parents and caregivers of special needs users, and it really starts from like the very beginning of why consider an iPad and what are iPads, all the way through all of the technical, how do you increase the volume and how do you find apps, and how do you teach people to use iPads. And I think it's really well done, and it'd be a great resource, I think, for parents. Let's see, a sampling of blogs and some other resources. All these resources then are on the blog post on the hellofoundation.com, so that you can link to them. And I'm just now thinking, if you're listening to this today on January 23rd, then this will be just right on the hellofoundation.com/blog. If you're looking for this in the future, you should look for the post from this date, January 23rd, 2013, or you could search for 6 tips for finding and evaluating iPad apps, or Hello Live. Do we have any questions? What? You want to share this? Did you want to start? No, that's okay. Okay, I think that's all for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. That's all.
Okay, you're good.
Did I do the wrong thing?